So guys, welcome to 21st virtual meetup. Okay, today we're going to have two sessions. First, Rahul will be coming. He's a principal consultant at Genpact. Before starting, a huge shout out to Browser Stack, our exclusive sponsor for all our community events and premium sponsor for conferences. Perfect. I'll just call up Rahul on the stage. Hi, Rahul.
Hey,
Perfect. How are you, Rahul?
I'm great. How are you?
All good, all good. Can you give us a brief intro about yourself and then you can start the session?
Okay. My name is Rahul Yadav. I'm currently a principal consultant at Genpact. Close to 11 years of experience. Um, and currently recently joined Genpact. Before that, I used to work with another company called Apps Associates. I've been associated with testing space for all of my professional life. Started in 2012. Since then, I have been a QA itself. Pretty. I'd like to say I'm trying to be pretty involved with the community and share my learnings that I have accumulated over the past 11 close to 11 years with the community.
Mhm. Perfect. Yes, Rahul, you can now share your screen and we
Okay.
can start.
So hey everybody, welcome to this session. This is one of the things that is very close to my niche, and I think so. This is one of the most pain areas that I see as a QA, where we want to be good at reviewing code. We often see our developer folks getting involved in code reviews, uh, and we often do ponder that how come those practices or principle can be integrated or should be integrated in a QA automation code review as well. So this is my story that I would like to present to you before you, and thank you Test Drive for allowing me this opportunity to present. Um, Now this is something about myself. My name is Rahul. I'm a principal consultant at Genpact. I often share my learnings and I blog at the blog like that I have given you, and I ramble a lot about testing testers and a lot of anime. And if you see this photo, there is a ninja, and I look like this. Absolutely, this is true, 100%. Okay. Uh, Now, jumping right into this session, what I want to talk about is, starting with what is code review, and then I'll note it down what we will not do in this session. So I do not want this session to be, one of those code review session. How I want you to, emphasize is how do you as a human want to approach a code review, and then we'll talk about something called an IKEA effect, and in between there are a lot of slides where you would like to learn about how to take code review as a author where you have submitted code review, and how to approach code review as a reviewer when you are somebody who is reviewing the code. Then we will have a summary of key learning. We will try to summarize whatever we learned in the sessions, uh, uh, checking for understanding how if people have any questions or anything, and discussion, right? If you The last 2 points are kind of similar approach where if you have any questions you want to discuss about something, so you can let me know, right? So I'll jump right into it, right? What is code review? Okay, there are two things which combine, that is code and this is review. These two words combine to say code review, right? What is it actually, or why do we need it, right? So there are pieces of the puzzle. Code review, you coded something, and you have coded something, you have done all the basic checks, but you want somebody to take a look at it, and as different set of eyes, right? To look at your code and say, hey, if my code is working as expected, do you think it should be improved, so that is basically code review in a general sense, right? If you go into a more technical description, that there are textual description, that but this is the basic description, that you coded something, maybe a test automation code, maybe a developer code, and you have done everything, you have done your basic checks, but you want somebody to have another set of eyes look at that code, and find out if there are any flaws or any improvements that are done, right? So that is basically the definition of code review. Why do we need it? So bugs, right? We are testers and we absolutely love bugs, don't we? Right? So and as a tester we love bugs, and as a software testing methodology we have learned, and we have seen over the course of the time that if bugs are detected early in the system, then it becomes much easier for them to fix than if they are detected at the later stages, right? So if you have code reviews in place, so at the nascent stage when your code is being developed, you can find out a lot of bugs when going just through looking at them. And that is one of the key criteria why companies, or why we insist on having code reviews. Second is agility, right? In this hectic software development era, everybody wants the best result in the least time with the top notch quality, isn't it? Every company desires this, that we have the best result, we'll deliver this in maybe the least time, and we'll have the highest quality. This is a demand of every company. And how you can achieve this? So one of the thing is you have robust code, you have a code that does not fail, you have a code that does not have a lot of bugs in them. And I'm not saying your code should be like free of bugs, like 100% free of bugs, but major bugs should be caught, right? Which can pain the customer, right? So that is something that can be achieved if you have a robust code review mechanism. The third thing is collaboration. It's the ultimate buzzword nowadays. In every software development circle, you see this word using way often, right? Collaboration. It's highly effective and it's highly required, because if you want to function as a team, right, you cannot do it all alone. You cannot do testing, you cannot do development, you cannot do DevOps, release everything on your own. You cannot be a one man army. You need the help of your team, right? And for a team to work well, you need collaboration, correct? So one of the thing if that fosters collaboration is if you have a good review practice, you have a good interpersonal connection with your team, then it becomes very easy for you to have a good code review structure, right? So that is something like bugs, to catch the bugs early, so that you to have agility, so that your development time remains less. You have good quality, you see the best result, you have the top notch quality in your code, your code is free of bugs. So that's, and if you want to foster collaboration, for fostering collaboration, code review is also one of the key things that you need to do. Now, what we will not do in this session, we'll not throw stones at each other. We'll not quarrel about you said this, you said that, and we'll not argue that okay, your code is good, my code, your code is bad, my code is right, right? We'll not at least do. We'll not pinpoint blames. We'll not finger point at anybody. We'll learn how not to, shift the blame on somebody, right? So this is not something that we'll try to do, right? And this session is also not about a code review checklist. I will not tell you, hey, if you are if you want to be a good software tester and you are going to do a good code review, you need to tick these boxes, you need to see this is in the code, your variable name should be like this, your software convention should be like the naming convention. No, I will not tell you about this, right? This is not a code review checklist. This is also not a how to do code reviews. It's not a code review for dummies, no sir. It's not about that. I'm not going to teach you about how, as a fresher or as a software tester, how to do code reviews. No, it's not about that. It's also not about something about best practices, right? I'm not going to tell you 10 points that are good for your code reviews. Like, I'm not going to go into that also, right? It's not about another best practices, like, no. I know it's a great practice, but generally if we have seen enough of that, and I think so, every time I see a best practice, right, I'm like another one, right? So no, I'm not going to teach you all about, hey, this is the best practice that you have to do. No. Code reviews for dummies, no sir. Is it a checklist? No. But what is it all about? And if you remember the meme that I have inserted in there, then props to you, right? This is Ace Ventura, right? And I absolutely love about him, right? And so if you are wondering what we will do in this session, you are absolutely at the right place. And I'll tell you what you have to teach. I'll try to imbibe in you, I'll try to share my findings about how the human aspect of code review should be. Now you have seen enough technical aspect of it, you have seen the best practices, you have seen what should you do. Now comes to the human aspect, and that is one of the core thing that as a tester over my 11 years experience I've seen that people sometimes get less focus on the human aspect rather than the technical aspect, right? So we'll see at the human aspect of how code review should be. then we'll do at mindset and phrasing, right? Code review is something which is very, mindset based, right? So you have to see the mindset of what the coder was doing when he coded that, right? And how we'll also learn how certain phrases that we say or that we comment in your code that can, affect the morale, can affect the inter teams, relationship, can affect, the thinking or the thought process or the mindset of a person who, of the code you are reviewing, right? So we'll see about that too. And this is a two-way channel, right? We'll see from both the perspective of an author, somebody who has coded and submitted for review, and somebody who is reviewing the code, right? So there are two main actors in this play: the coder or the author who has authored the code, and the reviewer who has actually, who is the one who is going to review the code, right? Right now I'll take a pause, and I'll see if there are any questions from anybody, right? If I think so. uh, 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 uh. Is there any questions from anybody?
No, Rahul.
No
Currently,
question.
there's no question.
Okay, right. I'll start it again. Okay. Now, be Shakespeare. Okay. Who doesn't know Shakespeare, the greatest author alive, as is supposed, right? So this is certain points that I want to throw at people. I want to let them know that this is from an author perspective. Code review is an author, developer, right? You are the author. You are, believe that you are Shakespeare, right? You have authored something great. Now, bask in that. Now you have done something, you have submitted it for someone to have a code review, right? So the first thing to do is, once you have submitted for code review, have the mindset that it's for your own benefit, right? You do not submit code review just because you want to have certain set of eyes look at that. You want to have code review because it can help you, in your learning journey. And continuous learning and continuous growth is something which is very important for certain individual, even in particularly in the testing field. So always welcome if somebody is giving you a feedback, and one of the things that, where you get feedback is your code review, right? So welcome, it's for your benefit. It's nobody wants to, pinpoint blame at you. Welcome that, right? Second is mindset reset, right? um, and this is something, that should be actually fostered from a leadership perspective, that I would suggest there. You need to have a team where you have to foster this culture where your teammates can accept your mistake, right? And that starts with not pinpointing blame at them, just mistakes in the code, right? You see, nobody a lot of people when they are coding do not inject bugs because of their own personal reason, right? There might be issues from their learnings, there might be issues from other things also, there might be third party issues as well. So there are n number of reasons why there might be bugs in the code. And when somebody is pinpointing it, it's a good practice. If you see that you have made a mistake, then accept it, right? To accept that, okay, yes, I think so, the my code has a mistake. So the first thing is to accept it, right? The acceptance. So, and it might be that the person has given you wrong feedback as well. So even then, you have to accept it. Okay, I accept the feedback, but I think that my code does not do this, right? So you have to accept first of all the that there are some mistakes, there might be some mistakes in your code. And as a leadership, right, as a QA leadership, it is our job, like the senior leadership, to foster a culture where making mistakes is also not punished, and accepting mistake is uh, desired. Like you should promote that, okay, if you make mistakes, accept it, because if you're not going to accept it, there is nothing that good comes out of a code review, right? So you have to create a environment where you accept your mistakes, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you're coding, you're human, you're bound to make mistakes. If you've heard of the phrase, to err is human, to forgive is divine, correct? And all of us We are puny humans. We are puny humans, right? So now or then, we will make mistakes, and this is true about your personal life, your professional life. So it is important for us to know that we are humans, and when we are coding, we are bound to make mistakes, right? And as that, it is important for as a human to to accept the mistake, that okay, I am a human, I might make mistakes, I'm not a god, right? So I might mistake. So accept that criticism. Be humble, right? We are humans, right? As again I said, we are humans, human make mistakes. Be humble, right? If somebody is pinpointing that okay, your code might need some improvement, or your code doesn't do what it is intended to do, be humble and accept it. Do not go and challenge it. Hey, I do not agree with you, I will fight with you and I'll argue with you that my code works. But even when somebody says, show that okay, your code is not working, I'll not talk to them, right? Do not have this kind of approach. Be humble, accept your mistake. If you see that okay, I made a mistake, accept it, right? uh, I think so. We'll go into the next slide where your code is not equal to you. It's very important for an author to understand this point. And I see this point plague a lot of people, right? A majority of people, where they understand that if somebody is commenting, or criticizing your code, they are criticizing you actually, your personality. It's not about that. It's just my code, bro. It's not me. I'm a very different person than what my code is. I might be a very very I might be a very calm person, where my whereas my code might be messy as hell, and I might be a messy person while my code is one of the best performing code. So your code does not equal to you. So understand. So if somebody comments at your code, hey, your code does not do what is intended to do, they are not saying, hey, you are at fault here. You are missing something. It's not like that. They're just pinpointing issues with your code, right? Criticism of code is not criticism of you as a human. Please understand this point, right? So this is a great point to understand, and this is one of the things that plagues a lot of people. I think so. Not even in testing space, even in the software development space, where they take the criticism of their code as their personal criticism. It's not like that, and you should try to not take everything that has been commented on your code to take to your heart, right? So you should try to uh, you are not your code, right? You are valuable, right? There is a reason you are in your team. Try to understand that there is a reason why your company has hired you. They see some sort of value in you, correct? You are in your team because your manager or your hiring manager saw some value in you, right? So you are valuable. So even if there are flaws in your code, see, remember that even if the most complex systems, like a precision system like a rocket system or an aircraft system, on which hundreds of life beliefs might have flaws as well, there might have bugs. If you remember, I think a couple of years ago there was a series of incident which was attributed to Boeing 737 jet, which was the MCAS system, right? The MCAS system, because of the software flow, the plane nose got up, right? And it you know caused the plane to crash, right? So even an infallible system, a precision system like a rocket system or a software jet system might have flaws as well, right? So it's imperative to understand that every piece of software that is created, that is out in the world, might have a flaw in that, and it's the human that have created it. So please understand that if somebody points at your flaw in your code, it's not pointing at you, and you are a valuable asset of the team, right? There is a reason why you are in your team. Try to understand that. So your flaws in your code does not translate to you not being valuable in your team. Okay. Also, programming or programming or software development is a skill, right? And skill is something which you learn over time. What my level of understanding at 11 years of experience is might not be the same of when I was new in the system, right? I have learned it over a period of time. I've improved my skills over a period of time. My code that I wrote in 2012 will not be the same as what I will write right now. because I have learned a lot of good things over my period, right? Over a period of time, right? So it's a skill which continuously improves. If you work on it, it will keep on improving. So try to understand that it's a skill. The skill is under question here. So even if you are finding that your code has some issues right now, might be 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, or even 1 week down the line, that would not be present because you've learned something new and you will not repeat it, right? So that is the thing that you should imbibe in you, right? So it's a skill. Programming is a skill. Software testing is also a skill, and it gets better over a period of time if you keep working on it. If you keep it stagnant, then we cannot do anything, right? If it's stagnant, it's stagnant. But if you keep working on your skill, right, even if it's software testing, it's a development, or your coding, if you keep working on it, right, it will keep getting better. It will just keep getting better, right? It's just like you are polishing your sword, right? You are polishing it daily, it will be as sharp as it is. It will be, at the first it might be a little blunt, but if you keep sharpening it, it will be as sharp as possible. Correct? So it's a skill, it can be learned, right? Same side of the coin, try to understand that the person who is giving you review, right, your reviewer, is not giving you personal opinions, right? It's not about personal. You are all on the same side, right? You are in a team. Your job is to find out bugs. Your job is to create automation code. Your reviewer has also the same job. You are in a team for the greater good of the product, for the greater good of your company, right? For the art of software testing, right? So it's not personal. Understand that whenever somebody gives you a code review, it's not personal, right? It's just, they're just try to in most of the time they're just trying to make you learn something or find out flaws in the code. You try to understand from the hat of a software tester. So as a software tester, your primary job is to find flaws in your system, to uncover flaws in the system before your user uses it, right? And if somebody I'm so sorry, if somebody comes and find flaws in your automation code as well, think of it as a tested it. Okay, this is the person who has tested my code before it goes to production, before I deployed it to production. So I should be thankful for him, so that he has pointed flaws in me, so that I can improve my code, right? So it's not personal. Do not think of a code review as a personal grudge, right? It's all about a good product at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, if you are able to push good code and your customer is happy, everybody is happy. You get dollars, you get reviews, you get good things. It's all good, right? And I quote uh, this quote from Fitzpatrick and Colin Suzaman, and this is in the debugging team section. Criticism is almost never personal in a professional software engineering environment. It's usually just part of the process of making a better product. Right. So as a tester, right, we do not want our product or the application that we are testing to go down the rabbit hole, are we? Right? We do not want that, right? We want that we can find or uncover as much flaws, issues, errors in the system before the end user you know, could use it, right? And if we are able to do that, we are able to do such a thing, don't then the end user will be very happy. We get reviews that, hey, I used your product, it's like fantastic, great job, right? When you hear this word, right, you feel good, right? You absolutely feel, hey, I did testing on this product and I'm proud of the team, right? So if somebody is pointing flaws in your code, why you should not be happy? M- at the time, my mindset is, if somebody points flaws in your code, the more flaws the better, because in that way I can push a quality code, right? So as a tester, my work is to find quality, and if somebody is finding quality, trying to improve quality of my code, what's more than that? Best thing, right? So take from that, take with a grain of salt, right? Now this is one thing, that is the IKEA effect, right? And IKEA effect is one effect that it was a experiment done on mm, two set of people. So one of the set of people, these people, there were two set of people. One set of people were given IKEA furniture which was already assembled, okay, and the second group of people was given disassembled furniture. They had to assemble it, and then they had to portray to the customer, sell it to the customer. So the people who assembled the furniture, they price 65% higher than the people who were already given assembled furniture. Now you see how that translates to the software testing or software world, or the code review world. So this is what you should try to skip. So this is where a lot of people get involved in your code, that I have written my code, right? I have certain kind of attachment to it. And I guess so this is the primary reason why there is software testing, that we do not want the person who has developed a piece of code to test their own piece of code, right? Because there might be some kind of, we are humans, right? At the end of the day, we are human. We might have certain attachment to your code, which, because of which we might see things which are uh, at the face value, and we are blind to it. We are blindsided because we love that we have created something, right? If you create a test automation code, let's say you're creating a page object, right? And you created a great page object, but there is one simple statement missing, which is messing up your couple of modules. But because you've created that code, you followed every good principle, but you have missed something at the face value, and you're not able to get the results. So at that time, a good code reviewer would find out that flaw and point it to you. So that kind of IKEA effect, right? That I have made something and I love it, and if somebody points a flaw at it, I would get defensive, right? So you should be, as a person, as even as a tester or a developer, you should be, trying to reduce this kind of IKEA effect in you, right? And this is a kind of cognitive bias that we have, that if I have added some piece of code, I have some kind of attachment to your code, my code, and somebody criticizes it, we get defensive, right? So this is the kind of effect, the kind of cognitive bias that we have in our mind, that we should try to reduce. I'm not saying you can do 100% removal, because as a human mind, at the end of the day, you will have some kind of biasness toward what you have create, because it's the I think so, what you would say, ability, or the ability, or the definition of a human mind, that we are getting attached to something, right? So that attachment, I think so, will be there, but you have to understand that you have to minimize that effect, right? So this is the IKEA effect that I was talking about. Again, uh, whenever a person is giving you a code review, it's about different perspective, right? A person who is giving you code review is different from you, right? He has different genes, he comes from a different background, he might have different set of knowledge, he might come with a different experience level, he might be in a different team where different set of rules were being followed. So understand that the person who is giving you code review is different from you, right? He comes from a different cultural background, maybe, right? So there is always a difference of opinion, right? So see, five fingers of your hand are never the same. Why is that, right? If those five fingers become of the same length, will the hand be able to grab something? No, it will have a lot of hard time grabbing something, right? So there are people, see the finger of your hand, just as the finger of your hand, there are people of different perspective. So you see, you have to see the other person's perspective as well. Now, many times when people give code review, right, they do not know the implicit knowledge of why you have coded something that you have coded, right? And it's very important. That's why we have this review checklist, that you have to name your variable, so that the other person who is reviewing it understands what you're trying to say, right? So many people at the time, if you're not following good code review practices, do not know the implicit knowledge that correct? And that might affect their reviewer, that might affect what they reviewed, right? So that's why if there is something that you have implicit knowledge and they don't have, then they might comment or criticize your code, and it's okay, right? Then you have to tell them this is not implicit knowledge, right? So I'll just show you one example here where this the implicit knowledge thing is there, right? So there are two set of code pieces, right? The first one is where if article dot state equal to state inactive. Now a reviewer might point it out, hey, article state is inactive. When does the inactive thing happens? Under what conditions does article state becomes inactive, right? The the reviewer might not be knowing this implicit knowledge. You might know that the knowledge, that when this state becomes inactive, the reviewer might also know, right? So 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 this is an example where there is missing implicit knowledge, and the reviewer might question why you have done this. If you While in the second thing, right, if you see the second, Boolean article is out of stock. Article dot state is article inactive. If article is out of stock, see in this, right, you're already telling, you're giving the reviewer the implicit knowledge that article state becomes inactive if that article is out of stock. Right? It's a good way of showing how good coding principle or how good code review practices can add the reviewer, and then they will not criticize the code. Like it helps them review your code better in a better way, not only criticize, help them better review your code, right? So this is how if somebody does not has implicit knowledge of your code, they might comment. If they have implicit knowledge of your code, right, if you are providing that implicit knowledge, then the situation might be different, right? So thereby, if you see the second point, it's okay to be blindsided, right? It's okay to be blindsided that the person does not know X. That's why I coded this and I know X. Then I have to inform you, hey, why did you code this? And then I can say, hey, this is because of this, right? So then you can take it forward. It's a good ideas to write. Again, code review is also a great place to share ideas and experiences, right? As you see, people come from diverse backgrounds, diverse teams, right? Diverse practices. So there might be people who come from a very bad coding background, and there might be people who come from a great coding background who have implemented a lot of good ideas, right? So it's not only about your code review, it's not only about your code, right? It's also about best practices and experience. So that's why a lot of times in my teams, I encourage people to not only comment on the code, comment on the practices, experiences that we are following, right? Well, let's say if somebody is following a very good comment, commenting practice, I'll you know praise them that, hey, your commenting practice is great, right? And if somebody does not do it, then I'll say, hey, this person does it really well, can you just sit it with him, or this is a way that this person has commented and I think so this is great and you should imbibe it, right? So it's a great place. Like code review is a great place where you can do more than just code. You can share your best practices, you can share your experience that, hey, your code works this way as intended, but in the past I have worked with this kind of code and it fails at this situation. So I think so your code might need some optimization, right? So this kind of experiences you can share in your code review, right? And this if you kind of do this kind of practices, back practices and sharing, right, it will always nurture a good habit of following good coding styles and practices, right? A person who joins your team, who's very new to your team, might not have understanding of the what practices and styles you follow in your coding standard, and your code review is one of the good places that you can make them familiarize, right? So so see in that frame of mind that, okay, code review is not only about my code, it's also about the practices or experiences that I'm going to get as a part of the code review, right? So as a part of the code review, you might also this is kind of brownie points that I would say that you get to know about this. And as a company culture, as a leadership, this is one of the feedback that I give to my leadership, that we have to nurture this kind of practices where we encourage people to share their experiences in your code review as well, that, hey, I have experienced this, and in the past this has happened, so I think so we can optimize the code. Or, hey, I in the past have not experienced this, but this is a great experience and I will use this going forward, right? If you're finding something good and you've not known about that previously, it's always a good practice to let the author know that, hey, I find your practice great and I'm going to use it, thank you, right? Also about that, right? Somebody might be inspired by you, correct? So these are also a couple of things, right? It's a good platform for sharing ideas and experiences, apart from just being all about doing your code, right? And these are the things, I think so we have reached the status at the point where I'm going to start couple of things from a reviewer standpoint. So if you see the author standpoint, the couple of points that I talked about, where you have to be in open state of mind, you have to be open to criticism, right? You have to open to criticism, you have to and you have to understand it's a criticism of your code, not yourself, right? It's not about you, it's about your code, right? And try to understand that uh, It can be a valuable lesson for you. It could be a new learning ground for you. It's a place where can learn a lot of new things as well, right? Jumping into the reviewer side, right? A reviewer is a same person as a author. Both are homo sapiens, right? It's not that a person who is reviewing the code comes from other planet. He's from the same planet. He might be from the same town as well, right? He's in same company, right? So both are humans, right? So do not treat a reviewer as somebody who is alien. And as a reviewer also, I should not treat myself as I am the king. Hey, somebody has sent my code for review, I am the king, he is my subordinate. No, you two are both are equal. You are both homo sapiens. There are chances that if somebody who has authored can make mistake, there are chances that as a reviewer you can also make mistake, right? You're human also, right? So as a reviewer, understand that you are not above the hierarchy chain. You are both at the same level. Okay. And because of that, because you are a reviewer, somebody has entrusted this duty of, getting the flaws or improving the quality of your code. You have to be very careful of the wordplay, right? This is one of the key areas that I see a lot of reviewers lagging. That the amount of comments or the amount of negative feedback or the amount of wordplay that happens in the code review comments is simply toxic, I would say, right? So you have to be very careful when you are giving feedback to somebody, because that person is looking up to you to improve their code and maybe improve their coding style as well. So you have to be very careful of what you say, right? So as you say, in Hindi is ek bar agar baण छूट जाता है, it does not if you shoot an arrow for once, it cannot come back, right? So this is the beauty or the curse of wordplay. So if you say it something, it's going to stick with the person, right? So very very careful of the wordplay. And this is something that I want to show in my slides, going forward, that how you can improve the wordplay or the phrasing of how you review your code. Your point of view is your feedback. As a reviewer, you are giving your point of view to a person who is submitted, right, to the author, right? So for put forward your thought and put for your thought from your point of view. Do not in your code review, let's say you're doing review of your code, and somebody third person has come and commented, hey, this code does not work well. You do not write xyz person has commented that this your code does not work. It should not be like that. The author has entrusted the duty of review on you. So your thoughts and only your thoughts should be in that, right? It should be from your point of view. Even if it's violating some quality practices that your company has, you should imbibe that my point of view is that these principles are being not followed, and you should do this, right? So always put forward your thought process in your code review. As a reviewer, you have to avoid personal statement, like statements like you, right? Starting with you, or if that statement contains you, it's a poison. Like these are like poison. This poison your state of mind of the author, and it kind of portrays negatively, that you are portraying, you're thinking of him in a negative sense. Like for example, if I show you one example, uh you know this is one of the example. You are not following the naming convention. That's wrong. It's like blaming something on the person, right? You are not following the naming convention. There is something wrong with you. It's nothing wrong with the person, right? It's something wrong with your code, right? So avoid kind of making you statements, right? Because it's very personal. The you statements are personal, kind of personal touch, right? Review should prompt thinking. Review should not prompt somebody to argue with you, right? Your review should be in a way that it should prompt somebody to think about their code, not get angry. Okay, if you're making, and again it goes to the previous statement, like if you have added comment kind of personal statement, like you did wrong, your code does not work here and there, you should have this and that. So it's kind of a personal attack on the person, right? And there are high chances that the person is not going to take that feedback positively. They're going to come back with their own accusations or their own reasoning, kind of there will be an argue situation. So instead of trying to do that, you should have your review such that the other person, the author who is has submitted a code, is prompted to think about your, their own code, right? So you should have this mentality, or you should have your careful with your wordplay. As I said, you have your wordplay in such the way that the author who has written the code should be prompted to think, rather than, prompted to argue, or, come back at you with your accusation, right? Because the idea right here in the code review is not to point that you are wrong, is to point that your code might be flawed, right? And that's why we do not encourage, and I also have seen that we do not encourage the kind of, statement like wrong, bad, right? These are the kind of words you should avoid when you are giving feedback, right? So instead of that, you can use like flawed, right? There are flaws in your system, this could be improved, right? I think so that there are chances of improvement, right? So that's why, because this word like wrong, bad, something, these are more like personal attacks or personal statements, right? So avoid those kind of words. Again, we'll see a couple of examples, right, of, how your feedback, your point of view could impact, right? See, if you're wrong, see, let's go into the wrong first. Like, you are not following the naming conventions, that's wrong. It's kind of accusing somebody of, doing a crime. You never comment your code, no one can understand it. Why are you hard coding these values? That's a bad practice. Right? So if you see these statements, right, the first in the top, right, these are like personal attacks on somebody. That, hey, you are wrong here. There is something wrong with you, right? Why are you not commenting your code? Everybody knows that commenting your code is a good practice. Why are you hard coding? It's like accusing something, right? If you see, if you close your eyes and, read this statement, suddenly somebody, shouting at you. It's like, for me personally, it feels like, if I see this kind of statements, somebody shouting at me, right? And I do not want that, right? As a coder, I do not want that. Instead, if you see the second para, right, I'm finding it challenging to understand the variables because they don't seem to align with the naming conventions we've agreed upon. It's a much more calmer way of letting the person know that, hey, the naming conventions might be out of place. Can we, can you just take a look at it? I noticed that there are no comments in this section, which makes it hard for me to follow what's happening. Could you add some comments for clarity? Right? See, this is kind of requesting the other, reviewer that, hey, yeah, I'm not able to understand your code. Can you please add some comments? Kind of short form. And you do not have to add these long statements as well, right? I'll just say, hey, like, instead of the second statement where it's a three-liner statement, I'll just read, I think so you should I think so, like, or I can rephrase it like, hey, I'm not able to follow the code because there are no comments, can you please add the comments? Right? You're requesting somebody, right? So you're not accusing somebody. I see some hard code values here, and I'm concerned that it could make the code less flexible. See how easy flowing statements these are, instead of the first batch where, it kind of accusatory statement. So rather than making accusatory statement, I will go rather with the, free flowing statement where I am kind of, requesting somebody to, hey, your code might have some these issues, right? So can you please work on them, right? Or can you please add this thing, right? So this is kind of, wordplay that I was talking about, right? Or the phrasing that I was talking about. That instead of using certain phrases, you could use certain other phrases to, you know, uh, convey the same thing while being, having a good sense of humility, right? The humbleness. And again, talk about code, not the coder, right? So from an author perspective, it's easy to understand that, hey, they are talking about, like we talked about this in the past, right? So you have to think from an author perspective that they are giving review about your code, not about you. And again, from a reviewer perspective, it's important to know that you have to talk about the code, not the coder. Correct? The code is in the question, not the person. Right? Of course, again, a person code might be a messy cell, and that person can be calm, and that person can be messy, and that code might be one of the best, performing code that you could have seen, right? So take the person out of the context, take the person out of the field. And that's why I said, avoid using statements like, you are not doing this, hey, why are you not doing this, right? So if you're taking that you thing out of that, and it's not only about you, right, taking somebody's name or something like that, right? Take the person out of the equation, talk about the code, right? So it's one of the good practices that as a reviewer I try to imbibe, right? And if you see the other points, as I think so same as well, criticize the code, right? You do not criticize the person. If you're criticizing the code, critique the code, right? Do not critique the person. And as a person, it's very hard for us to, take the criticism of code personally, because code is all, it's not a living thing, right? It's an objective thing, right? So if somebody is only commenting on the code, hey, it's code, I can fix it, right? You can always fix the code. But if you're commenting on somebody's person, their chances are it might, they will take it personally, and your interpersonal relationship would, get bad, right? And if that gets bad, if your interpersonal relation within the team gets bad, then chances are that you have to worry much more about a missing semicolon or a missed variable name than your interpersonal relations, right? So critique the code, not the person, right? And avoid finger pointing. Like finger pointing is that, like blaming somebody for certain aspects of code, right? Hey, you did not do, you missed this here, you missed that here, you should add this here, right? So in the scenario that I have seen, right, in finger pointing, people get defensive. And if there is somebody, let's say there is a situation that generally happens is, uh, you have been added, let's say there is person X who has been asked to, you have been asked to, let's say, add some, add some code to the existing code, right? You have added the code, you have sent it for review, and the reviewer comes and said, hey, you did not do a good job, this whole method is bad, this whole method is very messy, right? Now there is certain part of the code which is not written by you, which is written by the earlier developer, right? And then you get defensive, and then you start finger pointing that I am not the one who coded this, there was the one person. So I've seen this situation, where people go into the past where hey, this person coded 3 years before, this was the issue that they did, why should I fix it, why are you criticizing me? And because of this, this issue happens. So that's why you have to, as reviewer, avoid finger pointing, right? So you might say, hey, there seems to be an issue with the whole module, right? The whole module is not functioning as expected, let's sit down and make refactor the code, right? Kind of that, where you're not accusing somebody of being an accessory of a crime, being an accessory of that flawed code. You're asking them to, hey, that code does not work, it has flow, let's sit down and try to refactor the code so that it works as expected, correct? So this is the kind of thing you should try to avoid, right? Avoid finger pointing, because in that case, the person who is doing the code might get defensive, will get defensive, not might, he will get defensive, and he will start finger pointing if that is something he is part of, right? So this person, X person who was the earlier developer, did that, right? So avoid doing that. Let's see some example, right? Lack of test data validation, and this is some examples from um, test automation perspective. Let's say you didn't validate the test data before using it, that careless. And I'm these are the statements that I have taken from my own personal experiences. A lot of the statements that you see here are actual statements given by people over a period of time. There might be a couple of a couple of changes here and there, but all of these, like the statement that you see, are part of the comments that I've seen over a period of time. You didn't validate the test data before using, that's scary. It's like pointing finger at somebody that why are you not being careful about it. Instead of directly pointing at them, you have to phrase in such a way, I noticed that test data is being validated before it's used in test case. Adding validation could help catch issues early and make the test suite more robust. I'm not pointing anything at anybody, correct? I'm just asking that, hey, if we validate the test case data before using our validation, it could help us catching issues and making the suit more over. Even if you add if you remove couple of lines from this statement, and be pretty direct about it, I noticed that the test data is not being validated. It's a good practice to add validation so that our test case can be more robust. So I can give this simple statement and it's much more positive, and asking the user to revisit their test code than the first statement where I'm literally accusing that you are being careless about your approach, correct? Second thing is, ask questions, don't impose. Like this is one of the principles that as a good reviewer you should follow, that ask a lot of questions. If you do not understand something in somebody's code, rather than saying it that I do not understand your code, ask, hey, what does it do, right? So because asking questions is less of a, from a language perspective, feels much less of a criticism to a person, rather than saying that I do not understand this. Correct. So let's say there are two people who are sitting at a code review table, and the person X has submitted it, and the person Y is not able to understand why you have coded this way. So instead of saying I do not understand, can you please add comments, or can you please explain the logic, I'll come back and say, hey, uh, can you tell me how this code actually works? I'm not able to understand the logic. See how these two statements are same but different, right? These two statements are basically same. I'm asking that person, I'm saying that person, I do not understand it, the logic of this problem, can you just understand it? See how these two statements are the same but are very different, right? So this is the kind of thing that you have to do, right? Ask question, but do not impose that, hey, I do not understand this, make me understand, right? When you ask questions, right, it triggers a thought process in a lot of people to make you understand certain things, right? Let's say, if from point of it, see from a point of teacher, if once your a student asks the answer, the teacher, you know it triggers their thought process, and they might answer the question, or they might take the question. If they do not know the answer, they might take the question back and then come back with an answer, right? This is the kind of thought process you should try to have. Do not impose your question, do not impose something. Instead, ask question that, hey, I'm not able to understand this, can you please make me understand, right? There might be see, if you go to the one of the earlier slides, there are implicit knowledge, right? There are implicit knowledge that you might not be aware of. That's why person X has coded this logic, right? So you might not understand because you do not know the logic, implicit knowledge. So instead of just blaming that I do not understand it, it's a good practice to ask a person to explain, so that they can better let them know what are their thought process of coding that. Correct. See, again is an example, using hard-coded values in test cases. See, if you see both the statements, right, these two statements are the same thing. Where I'm asking somebody to replace the hard-coded values with variables, right? But if you see the first statement, I'm imposing that, hey, you are your code is not good, it's not maintainable, you have to change it. While in the second statement, I'm just asking question as to why that thought process is right. And that person would be tempted, much more tempted to make me understand what their thought process was when using the hard coded values here. Correct. So in that way, you have to implement, kind of question, asking question methodology, that you ask questions with your author rather than imposing your statements, right? Then there is the OIR rule, which I think so, and this is something that I was not very, knowledgeable about. And I think so. On LinkedIn, there is a person, Andres Dorjonins, and you should follow him. He has great, some great stuff. Has great good courses on plural site also. So that is this is the feedback, structure feedback, how you structure feedback. Like, this is one of the good rules that you can structure a feedback, which is called OIR rule: observation, impact, and request or result. So you observe, you describe what your observation is in objective and neutral way. Try to be as neutral as well. You try to you know give your observations in your from your own point of view. Then you tell the impact of what the observation is actually doing, and then you request the person to, hey, change this, or you say that, hey, because of this might happen, right? And will just say an example. So this is one of the rules, right, which I think so, if you are as a senior person, if you are reviewing the code, this is one of the good rules that you should try to imbibe in your code review process, which is the OIR process. You observe what is the code doing, you describe what the impact of the code is, and you then request the person to change something, or you tell them, okay, because of this impact, this is the end result, right? Let's see an example. Test method complexity. Let's say there is a junior in my team who has coded an automation logic using a lot of if else statement and looping statements, like multiple loops and multiple conditional statements. So as a part of the OIR rule, as my observation, I will say this test method has multiple loops and conditional. This is my observation. The impact is, I find it becomes very hard to follow the logic of this test, and it impacts the maintainability and readability. Correct. You see how these two are uh, going step by step. Now request is, I think if possible, can we break it down into, can we refactor and break it down to smaller component, right? So this is one of the good practices, like OIR practices, that you can use for code review, correct? So once you have a code, try to once you go down to tomorrow or day after tomorrow to your workplace, if you have a code review in place, somebody has asked you, try to implement it, see how much it changes, correct? Again, one more example, hard coded test data, right? If your test data is hard coded, you can, instead of directly pinpointing it, like, you can rephrase it. And I'm not asking you to rephrase this much words. You can shorten your words while keeping the same idea, right? You can tell the observation, what is the impact, and what is your request, or what is the result, right? Always think that, okay.
Rahul,
Sorry. Yes.
Rahul, really sorry to interrupt in between, but we're running out of time. Can we
Sure.
wrap the session
Yes, yes.
in
In the
next
next 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yes, yes. I'll try to wrap it up.
Yeah,
So, in the interest of
yeah,
time, I'll
perfect.
just go through this slide. Like, always try to understand from an author perspective as well, that there might be multiple solutions to your, a same problem. What solution might not be the ideal solution, or what your solution, the author might not know, right? So it's always a state of mind where you have to know that the other person's solution is might also be a valid solution. So you have to keep an open mind, right? uh, don't jump in front of every trend, right? You don't have to a pedant, and a pedant is a person who is very, in Hindi we say nukta nichi karna, he criticizes every single line of code, right? You have to not be that person who criticizes every single thing, right? So that's why it does more harm than good. Like, if the people are going to be frustrated with you, so instead of doing every single line of code, choose your battles, that you are going to fight. This is the statement that I want to make. Choose wisely the battle that you are going to fight. Flaws focus on the issues, and flaws that you are working. If there is an issue with the logic of this statement, that has to be taken a greater priority than your variable name, right? A variable name can be fixed, in other code review, whereas the logic is of much higher priority, right? So instead of criticizing every single line of code, you have to you know kind of take priority. And as a tester, you already know how priority and severity affects, right? So this is kind of telling you that you have to prioritize your issues, like praise people. This is one of the things that you have to do. If you find that a good code is good, praise people, like, okay, your good code was good. Does not praising somebody does not take anything away from you, right? So, and if you, let's say there are conditions where you have to praise and criticize, so separate the praise from criticism. It should not be in the same statement, right? And it's perfectly valid if some there are is a code review and there is nothing to be changed, so it's a perfectly valid statement. So no changes required is a valid statement to say. So if you have found good code, praise people, right? Then there are feedback filters. If once you are giving feedback, you can bucket your feedback into three separate categories, like, is it true, like, is it true, if I'm giving the feedback, it should be, is it true what I'm saying, is it necessary, what feedback am I giving, is it really necessary to be given, and is it kind. And this is, I think so, given by April Wiesel. And this is one of the good practices that you have to filter before giving your feedback. Once you're starting writing your feedback, just categorize your feedback statement into the three categories. Is it true whatever I'm giving, is it true, is it necessary, should I give this statement or should I tell this, or is it kind, like, am I being overtly rude, or am I being overtly nonsensical about it. So if you see the statement, over complexness, instead I'll just say, have you considered the inbuilt assertion, right? So be kind to people, right? That's what the main message here is, right? If I go into the TLDR, right, we have seen both the practices. We have seen from author mindset, be humble, your code is under question, not you. You have to get new perspective, try to limit the IK effect, be thankful that it's your code is being reviewed, right? They You are on the same side of the coin, right? It's a good practice for knowledge exchange. From a reviewer perspective, use more iMessage, try to be less personal, ask questions, try to filter your feedback into three separate buckets. Is it true, necessary, kind. Follow the OIR rule, try to follow the OIR rule, praise wherever necessary, and don't be a pedant, right? Don't be a somebody who criticizes every single line of code. Talk about the behavior of the code, not the person, right? And think that, and understand that there might be separate solution to a single problem. Correct. So these are the kind of thing that as a code reviewer you should be trying to imbibe. I think so. This brings an end to the my session. I hope I was able to add some value to your knowledge base, and I think so. Whenever you go on your Monday, if you have a code review to do, just try to follow at least one of the two principles that I have mentioned. I guess so. It will do a lot of good for you. Thank you.
Perfect. The major takeaway which I can pick from this session was don't blame the coder, but blame the code if you want to. Like, just
Yes,
criticize the
absolutely.
code, right?
Criticize the code, not the
Lovely.
coder.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much, Rahul,
Yeah.
for taking time
My
for
pleasure.
us.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.